Josh, don't film the clock. That's
I'm going to go ahead and call this the August 27th, 2018 meeting to order. The first item for our agenda is closed meeting. Specifically, be it resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia, hereby enters into a closed meeting for the purposes of discussing the following. Section 2.2-3711, consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. 1. Old BMS development agreement. The next item is discussion or consideration or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplinary, or resignation of specific officers, appointees, or employees of any public body. 1. Agency on Aging. 2. MBC Development Corporation. 3. Transportation Safety Commission. 4. Board of Equalization. 5. Personnel. Is there a motion to go into closed meeting?
Motion.
Second.
So motion by Supervisor King, second by Supervisor Shepherd. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Ms. DeMoss?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Chair Tuck?
Aye.
7 ayes.
We're in closed meeting. Is there a motion to come out of closed meeting?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Ms. DeMoss?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair Tuck?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Certification of closed meeting. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia, hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion conveying the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board. And this resolution or certification is the board's word to you that we're only discussing things that we're supposed to be talking about in closed meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Ms. DeMoss?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Chair Tuck?
Aye.
7 ayes.
The next item on our agenda is a moment of silence, and then after that, I would ask the county administrator to lead us in a pledge. Would we all rise?
Let us pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
The next item on our agenda is presentations, and we have John Eustace with the Executive Director of the New River Land Trust. Good evening.
Good evening, Board. My name is Brian Alexander. I'm President of the Board of Directors of the New River Land Trust. We are here tonight to discuss an opportunity for mitigating impacts on forested areas caused by the Mountain Valley Pipeline. And I would like to introduce John Eustace, the Executive Director of the Land Trust, who has some more details about this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just very quickly, some background on the Land Trust. Our mission is conserving farms, forests, open spaces, and historic places in the New River region. Since 2002, we've helped conserve more than 51,000 acres of land, including 26 miles along the river. We are partnering on our project with the Poverty Creek Trails Coalition, which is a group that operates under the New River Valley Bike Association. And they have worked for several years, since 2014, in partnership with the Forest Service to manage, sort of develop the trail system out at the Pandapis Pond area of the Jefferson National Forest. They've done over 1,300 hours of trail work out there, and it's everything from fixing muddy spots to now they're basically creating new trail and putting in a mile-plus long trail right now to move the trail to a more sustainable spot. And they would be our partner on this project if it were successful. The Mountain Valley Pipeline, the state of Virginia negotiated for them to pay in $27.5 million into a series of mitigation funds. One of them was going to be administered by the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, and it's $15 million. It is intended to mitigate impacts to forested areas that have been crossed by the pipeline. There will be a grant round that will be rolled out shortly, probably sometime early September. This first grant round will probably just be for $3 million of the $15 million. And the Land Trust had sort of heard a little bit about this, and as information had trickled out, we decided that we would like to focus on the Brush Mountain area right outside of Blacksburg. There's several reasons for this, is we were already in partnership with the Forest Service, talking to landowners out there. We knew we had some landowners that were willing to talk about conservation options for their property. A lot of the criteria for the grants that they'll rank the grant proposals on fit very well with that Brush Mountain area. It's intact forest land. It's less than 3 miles from the Mountain Valley Pipeline Corridor. It has very high ecological integrity. It's adjacent to the National Forest. They're looking for properties, large properties adjacent to public land. It's also adjacent to the Heritage Park, Blacksburg Park, not far from the terminus of the Huckleberry Trail. Obviously a scenic ridge line for Blacksburg and the larger Montgomery County community. Potential connection to the Huckleberry Trail. There are natural heritage resources associated with that forested area. There's rare, threatened, endangered species or habitat that supports them. And then also it's a drainage for the Toms Creek and Poverty Creek area. Toms Creek is actually impaired on the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality impaired list. And then Poverty Creek is actually on the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries trout stream list. So opportunity to protect some forested land there. You might help stabilize the impairment, keep it from getting worse in Toms Creek, and then protect the good water quality you have in Poverty Creek. We also have already talked to a lot of community groups, both nonprofits, individuals, and business groups, and they've all indicated strong support for us going after funds to purchase land on the mountain and then see it protected and then ultimately, hopefully, open to the public. We also have a really great project readiness, being that we're already in conversation with several landowners who indicated a strong willingness to talk to us about conservation options, including the landowner that we're going to talk about tonight, who had said, we'd really like you to come back to us with a proposal to purchase our property. The area that we're talking about is this area here, with Blacksburg on the right of the screen, Heritage Park, and the Huckleberry Trail shown here. And then the green is National Forest, the Pandapis Pond area, with the existing trail system shown in the red dash marks. The property that we are going to initially go after with the grant proposal is this 330-acre property here that is entirely in the county, in Supervisor Shepherd's and Supervisor Biggs districts. It's split at the top of the mountain. And this is a close-up of the property. We already have it under contract, contingent on being awarded grant funding. And the owner is really supportive of what we're trying to do. Again, like to buy the property, but the land trust doesn't really have the sort of capacity. Well, we're not in the business of owning large tracts of land and managing them for public access. And one of the criteria for the grants is that ultimately the land be open to the public. So the reason we're here today is to give you a little bit of information about the project, and I'm happy to answer questions, sort of get into the details, but also to talk to you, hopefully start a conversation about the potential for us, if we are successful in getting the grant funding and purchasing the property, talking to the county about the potential to transfer the property in the future to the county to then be open as a public area. It would need to be maintained as a largely forested area, but it could be a nature park, it could have multi-use trails, and this seemed to really fit in well to a recent initiative that the county had announced, talking about their interest to build on the existing trail system and in fact, connect to trail systems in the Roanoke Valley area. So we hope that this would be something you'd be interested in. Our real request for this evening is that at the very least that you be willing to consider a letter of support for our grant proposal. And then if you're willing to take that step, at that same time also maybe beginning to sit down and talk in detail about what it would take to ultimately transfer the property to the county. The Property Creek Trails Coalition, as I indicated, has already been working with the Forest Service, and they have verbally agreed to, if the county were to take on the property, to take on a partnership role with the county and take a lead in looking for resources to develop the trail system, and then also taking a role in maintaining any sort of trail system that would be developed. Just to go back to the map, there is an existing roadbed that connects all the way to the top of the mountain, and you can connect then to existing trails that link into the Poverty Creek Trail system. There's also a lot of potential for additional trails on the property, and there are two access points at this point, one off of Glade Road, and then one actually off of Meadowbrook that's in the town of Blacksburg.
You ready for questions?
I'm ready for questions.
Okay. All right, we'll start off with Supervisor King.
No questions.
Supervisor Fitchkowski.
Do you know when the grant would be approved?
The awards will probably be early December. It could be December 6th. But they haven't rolled out the final grant information. They've just sent out the draft so far. So I don't know for sure. But I think that there is going to be a push to award money before the end of the year for this initial round.
Thank you.
Vice Chair DeMonts.
You know that I am completely in support of preserving forested areas as much as possible. I will say I am the board's liaison to our Parks and Rec Commission, and I'm concerned that our staffing levels that we have currently in the Parks and Rec office, we have got them very, very busy already. And so to add another 300-plus acre park, even if it is preserved as a nature park, would require a pretty heavy commitment from the coalition to assist because we don't have the people really to help with the project. So that's something just to think of, and as you're having conversations moving forward, that it would be a pretty heavy lift on a volunteer group.
Yeah, I understood and foresaw that was going to be a concern. I think the Poverty Creek Trails Coalition has really got a pretty good track record with the Forest Service, and the momentum that they've got in terms of numbers of volunteers and volunteer hours has really been growing each year. I think you can look to the example of what's happened in Roanoke with the Carmen's Cove area and the groups there, such as Pathfinders and the Blue Ridge Bike Gravity Group, where there's been extensive trail development, and it's largely been in a partnership with those nonprofit groups. So I anticipate that you could have something like that. You could replicate that model here, And it certainly is still going to, cost some resources, but I think the Trail Coalition can play a very active role and sort of get the ball going, and there's a lot of potential for the future.
Yeah, and I agree. And it's sad to even talk about it in those terms, having the staff in place to receive a giant tract of land, but that's reality. So I appreciate that you've anticipated that and kind of already started building those bridges. As far as a letter of support for the grant application, that is something that I would be comfortable with. And I, I'm a supporter of the land trust. We run into each other on the Poverty Creek Trail, so I'm a trail user as well. And so I'm excited to see an opportunity like this kind of take something negative that's happened in our community and try to turn around into something positive. So I do appreciate you bringing this forward to our attention.
Thank you. And I think it's got the potential to grow. I mean, there's going to be multiple grant rounds. There could be other project areas, other properties. And that's something that we are actively researching.
Good.
Supervisor Biggs?
I'm also very supportive of this. I think it would be great for our citizens and for our county, but I do want to clarify something. I know we don't have a lot of our pipeline citizens here, but I want to clarify exactly how I came to find out about the $27.5 million that MVP gave to the state. And that was when I met John, and he told me. And I think for the first 5 minutes, I was sitting there with my mouth hanging open trying to figure out how that kind of money would be used in a district where the pipeline didn't go through. Since the pipeline's in District A and District C, and we have had citizens over time, come with their concerns about water quality and everything else. And John was very informative about telling me about these qualifiers. So I did some further research, and I found out that all this occurred during Governor McAuliffe's term, and the money was already divvied out to the different categories from which you can apply for these grants. And I just want to let folks out there know that no local elected officials were involved from any of the areas in that decision making. We were not at the table. So we did not have input into saying like what we might have felt the money could go to in our communities. And I really feel a need to clear that up because, for those of you who are wondering, what in the world? Well, that's what in the world. And so it's like Supervisor DeMotts is saying, it's trying to take some money that was given and do something in a positive way with those qualifiers on it. And I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you.
If I could just say, I think we really approached this as being against the pipeline, and we were right from the beginning. And so we very much realize that this doesn't make anybody whole. I feel terrible for all the people who have been impacted. We did reach out to a number of the people who've been leaders of the opposition and asked them if they had suggestions of projects, and also asked for their input before we really started down this road. And everybody was supportive in all of those conversations.
And I want to thank you for reaching to the Preserve Montgomery County folks, because I have talked to them after you talked to them, and they told me the same thing. Thank you so much for doing that.
Well, I think it's the right thing to do. So.
Supervisor Bone?
Can you go back to the slide 7, which is the map? So the slashed lines above this parcel, what is that? The fine print is kind of small.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have explained that, but that is all land that is on the north side of the ridge, and there is potential for that to be in the future transferred to the forest, to be a boundary line adjustment, and that would minimize by about 97 acres the amount of land that, say, the county or whoever would have ownership of this would be responsible for. Part of the reason why that might make good sense is there's already some trails that exist on that property that link into the Poverty Creek Trail system. Those properties are currently on private land, and that is an issue. And the forest had talked about closing those trails at the property boundary. And that's part of sort of how this all got started, was the trail user community pushing back, talking to the forest, the district ranger, and saying, let us try and work with these landowners to come up with some other solutions. And so we talked to the district ranger about our proposal, and he's indicated support, and he said that, you know, we can have some conversations about that potential super transfer. It might make sense for more of that land on the north side of the ridge to just be in the forest, and there'd be a clean boundary at the top of the ridge.
So you're talking about that whole swath,
Right.
including the section that's shaded there, right?
Right here, everything with the line across, the black line.
But as
across.
far as this first transaction, you're talking about from the forest line to Glade Road, right?
Glade Road.
So how many acres again is that?
It's 330. It doesn't include this piece right down
Sure.
here, but our hope is that we'd have a 50-foot right-of-way through that property. It's the same owner, owns all 3 parcels.
So again, if this went through, you all would purchase these 300 acres, give it to the county. At some point in time, the Forest Service might ask us, or there's some kind of meeting that says the Forest Service would be happy to take into the Forest Service these acres that are shaded already. The other question I have is, it looks like these are roads from Glade Road up. Is that true? Is that a road or a trail?
It's more of a trail.
Okay.
I mean, you could take a Jeep up it almost to the top, and then the last mile or so, half mile, trees have grown up. And I think as the landowner had not wanted trespass coming off the road at the top of the ridge, and so had let the trail sort of close in a little bit.
And then there's a trail just below that road that kind of mirrors that road.
That would be folks from the Poverty Creek Trails Coalition have been out on the property a couple times, and from their sort of investigations, they feel like that would be an excellent site for an additional, more of a single track type trail.
Okay. Thank you for meeting with me also. That was very helpful, and I am supportive of this too.
Supervisor Shepherd.
I think you've already answered my question. I was looking at, it didn't look like that parcel came all the way to Glade Road. And I was just wondering about access and or parking. And that would be the only concerns that I would have. And I'm in support of the letter too. So.
Just a couple of things and observations, really. And I want to make sure you can see this tract of land, if I'm correct, from Price's Fork Road as you're going out, if you look towards the mountains.
Yes.
So when people come to Lane Stadium and they look out the mountains and they see the leaves changing, they're looking out towards this land. So it's not just we're protecting the view shed as well as we're protecting this land from being developed.
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely prominent from 460, Price's Fork, from Heritage Park, a number of places. You see this property. I just went down Mount Zion Road. You can see it from there to a certain degree as you look back.
I don't have any other questions. Does any other supervisors have any other questions? And I was going to ask for the deadline. How quickly do you need the letter of support?
I don't believe that the grant round is going to close until early October, but I don't know. I haven't seen those hard dates yet, but I'd say by the end of September.
One of the other things about the criteria, is there anything that you would need in our letter that would help you in getting the grant? Is there some, every grant's kind of had some little magic that and phrases that might be helpful. If you wanted to provide that to staff, I think that could be helpful in making sure the letter of support, and then we can start reaching out, because I share some of the same concerns that Supervisor DeMott's.
Sure.
We are stretched thin on our Parks and Rec. We're hoping to expand some things, but citizen involvement like the Poverty Creek Association, our coalition, is exactly what we need to help. Now,
I was just going to say, what exactly is it that we need to do? So I think you covered that.
Okay. Is there consensus in regards to sending the letter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You can stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like.
I wouldn't wish that on you.
The next item on our agenda, I better get the glasses out, is a public hearing, specifically a request by Shaw Development LLC, their agent Gay and Neal, to rezone a total of 8.58 acres from residential compact with preferred conditions allowing 38 single-family dwelling units to multifamily residential with proffered conditions 3.8 acres to allow up to 28 single-family attached dwelling townhomes and residential R3 compact with proffered conditions of 4.7 acres to allow 23 single-family detached dwellings. The property is located on the south side of the Roanoke Road along Route 11 460, approximately 300 feet southwest of the intersection of Old Roanoke Road, Route number 844, and the North Fork Road, Route 603, Elliston, as identified in tax map 060-1A, parcel ID 070690 in the Shawsville Magisterial District. The property currently lies in an area designated as Village Expansion in the 2025 Comprehensive Plan and further designated as mixed use in the Elliston-Lafayette Village Plan. Marty, how'd I do?
Very well.
Okay. Emily, thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to give a presentation of the staff report that was provided in your meeting packet for this evening. As Chris already covered in text, the property is located in the eastern portion of the county. It is the former site of the Elliston Elementary School, and so you'll be able to see that. And previously, the last two times it came before the board, it was addressed on Tango Lane. Just to give you a little bit of background, because this looks very familiar to some of you, back in 2013, the county sold the property, the comp plan designation was revised, and it was subsequently rezoned to RM1, and that was for 64 townhomes. Back in 2015, it came back for R3 compact, and that was for single-family detached, individualized lots, and that was for 38 units. And that process went all the way through site plan evaluation. And the application you have before you now is sort of a combination. So it includes both single-family attached and detached units. And that's the acreage breakdown. We'll cover that a little bit. So this is an aerial of the site. It's located right off of 11460. And then this here is Old 460. And this is where Tango Lane used to be prior to the board abandoning that. You can see here on this concept plan what the break looks like between the RM1 and the R3 compact. You see the townhomes along this portion, single family in the center, and then along this portion. This black line in the center will actually be the district line because we don't allow parcels to be split zoned. So this will actually be where RM1 is located, and that's the R3. This gives you an idea of a concept plan. It shows kind of the layout. You can see a little bit, there's some single family around the property, and that has just some basic buffering on this side through landscaping. There's actually a really nice berm here if you've ever been to this site. The topography is a great shield here. And also, just to go back on that one, sorry, you can see here, this is a right-in and right-out only, and that's on the 11460 portion. The full entrance is located on Old 460. So the property, as I mentioned before, is already zoned R3 compact. This just gives you the view right there from the entrance at 11460. And this gives you a sense of the view there along Old 460. This here is the closed portion right there. This is actually on the site. You can see here, this is where the school was demolished, and the concrete is still located there. So So just to go into some of our analysis, as far as transportation, as I mentioned, Tango Lane has been abandoned. And the first 2 times that you guys looked at this, that was an item that we had a lot of concern about making sure that that was taken care of. We do have that right in and right out only access on 11460 and the full entrance there on 603. The internal streets are proposed to be privately owned and maintained, and so when we get to later in the presentation, that'll be an item that you'll be taking action on when you take action on the application. And then VDOT, because they've reviewed it now multiple times, are comfortable with what has basically already been designed as the road layout. This road layout is very similar to what had already gone through site plan process. It is in the PSA water and sewer area. It's in that special discharge district there in Alliston. The schools, it could add up to approximately 31 students based on the school's calculations, and they indicated they had capacity in that strand. They also have proffered a bus shelter, and that will be at the full entrance there along 11460. This is very common in any of our projects where the roads are private and the school buses don't go internal to the property. Emergency services noted the 2 hydrants and also is a fan of the loop drive. Some of the earlier versions of this didn't have that, and so they did make a comment on it. As we talked about earlier, the 2025 comp plan has this in village expansion, and then the Allison Lafayette village plan has it designated as mixed use. It did qualify for the criteria for rezoning with some of the items that we talked about earlier as far as access and utilities. It also has the amenities, so the on-site rec area, the school bus shelter, an internal sidewalk, interparcel access. Again, it's in sort of a low-density residential area, so there's not a external connection plan, but internally there's access both for pedestrians and for vehicles. And then the buffers, as I mentioned, are shown. And we'll have to provide those screening trees that meet the corridor plan and take advantage of that berm will remain there next to the adjacent properties. So as far as the Allison Lafayette Village plan, it is, again, served by the utilities. It meets 2 types of housing, which is in the multiple housing goal section, and transportation. Not only does it have the internal network, but they also have proffered an easement to connect to the vital trails. So should that trail system come through as part of our village transportation links planning that we have, they have proffered an easement to be able to have that go right through the property. The corridor plan, I mentioned this earlier, and the landscaping is keeping with that plan, and also, again, the vital plan. So we had a lot of plans to cover with this one, but we did touch on all of those and look for consistency. And because of that consistency, those goals and objectives are touched on, and also it qualified for rezoning consideration. The owners propose to have 2 different districts. One is 3.8 acres for RM1, and that's going to give us 28 single-family attached units, and then 4.77 acres in the R3 compact, and that entails 24 single-family detached. There's an open space area to be maintained by the homeowners association and that active recreation in the center of the parcel. The Planning Commission held its hearing. We did not have any speakers during the hearing. We did have a gentleman in the audience that was in support. He just came to show his support. He didn't speak. We also had a gentleman meet us on site to indicate that the neighborhood, at least the people he had talked to, saw this as favorable. It's at the end of a road, and they indicated that sometimes that leads to some folks hanging out there that they kind of wish didn't hang out there. So we learned a little bit about that. The Planning Commission, after their hearing, did vote with a recommendation of approval with proffered conditions, and those conditions are the same that were provided in your packet. They touch on the layout, utilities, management, screening, and road improvements. We touched on all of those. The landscaping consistent with the corridor plan. the potential to connect the Vital Trail, the internal rec area, a phasing of construction, so they're going to do a mass grading and then get into the infrastructure improvements. They proffered an architectural design mix of brick, stone, and vinyl. They have 3 hydrants provided, and those locations will be worked out on the site plan. The bus shelter, as we've talked about before, we coordinate with the schools during our site plan review to make sure it's the type and in the location that works best for the bus driver and their transportation division. And then it will be subdivided again to prevent the split zone parcel. Additionally, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the private street network, and that is consistent with what's provided on the concept plan. There was a vote of 7-0 with 1 member absent after the Planning Commission's hearing. And that's all that I have for you. The applicant and his agent are both present tonight and didn't have a presentation, but are available to answer any questions that you might have.
Supervisor Fidzikowski, do you have any questions of staff or the applicant?
I just have a couple of questions for Emily, just to clear it up in my head. So the bus shelter would actually be at the 460 entrance?
It would actually, the old 460.
The old 460, so
Yes.
the bus would have to come over that single lane bridge, isn't that what's there? A single lane bridge over the railroad tracks?
No, the bus would have to come in off of North Fork here and then into the here and have a suitable turnaround
Yeah,
to
wouldn't
get
go
back
across
out.
that bridge.
This is not open
Okay.
for vehicles.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Vice Chair Motz?
Not necessarily a question about the project itself. I understand that our current policies don't allow us to have 2 different housing types together. But I like a mixed-use development like this because I think it lends itself to a diversity of incomes, diversity of experiences, and things like that. This might be a kind of a technical question, but is there a way that we can,
We do have
without subdividing, and I'm not talking about wanting this not to be subdivided, but just is there a way that our planning department can look at applications like that without subdividing?
mixed residential is typically in our PUD res district, so
Yeah.
that is an option where they don't have to be separated out in the way that this was. And I think in our TND there's some flexibility for
What
mix
is
of housing.
TND?
Traditional neighborhood design.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Supervisor Biggs?
Okay, so within the development are private roads.
Yes.
So who is, since they won't be built to VDOT standards, who's going to be plowing the roads and taking care of the roads?
That will be on the homeowners association.
So that there's going to be an association, they'll pay dues?
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll review their association documents in combination with the county attorney.
Okay, so the people that buy there will know that VDOT will not be plowing their roads,
We should, yes.
so that Steve won't get any calls about why the roads are not plowed in
I
that
have a
neighborhood.
4-wheel drive. I'll be on.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Bone?
So it's interesting that this is coming up, and we've got the Clay Street conversation going to happen in a couple minutes. Clearly, this is not the same as the house with the pool, or the houses on the left, or the trailer park, where, so is it compatible? Is it, does any of those semantical, if that's a word, the, words that we were trying to have definitions to or clarity of relate to this parcel? Meaning, it doesn't look anything like what it's around. I understand that it's zoned for a higher, but I guess people down in C don't really care, or I don't know.
Well, as I mentioned, before I even became the director here, it was rezoned for the 64 townhome units. So we work off of that existing zoning and went to R3 compact. And then this, again, as I mentioned, is a mixture of the two. It is consistent with some of the goals, as we've talked about before in our village area, is where we want to see growth and to take advantage of the infrastructure. So all of the items that came together for this application, I'm sure what initially led the board to approve the project, and this is consistent with the previous two.
I have a question about, it looks like there are walkways, like a asphalt path or something like that crosses from the...
Yes, to serve the internal playground area. Yes, that's correct.
And they haven't described what that internal park playground is going to be like at all? It's just going to be an open space at this point in
They've
time?
identified it as a tot lot, and so that can mean a couple of things, but it's generally a term that, we're used to seeing at these sort of smaller pocket parks that will have some sort of playground equipment there, maybe with a mixture of things like picnic tables, but tot lot is sort of a term that, has been identified by the applicant, and staff feels comfortable with knowing what that is when the site plan comes in.
So is it in a proffer, or is it on their design that it's going to be a tot lot? Is it defined?
This concept plan is proffered, and right here you have a 6-foot wide asphalt walking path, and then here you have the proposed playground as a tot lot.
Okay. And so the total parcel acreage is it's something like 8, 7, something like that?
I don't have it.
And then it's divided in 2.
It's 8.5.
8.5. Yes.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Supervisor Shepherd?
No questions.
Supervisor King?
Just have 2 questions. Number 1, the fire hydrants, they will be up and working before the first house is sold, is that correct?
Based on the phasing, they will go in right after grading. They will go in with the infrastructure.
They will be up and working before the first house is built.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Number 2 is the letter we have in our packet from Bob. This letter and stated conditions are only valid to July the 1st, 2017. Has anything changed?
He did issue a new letter.
Okay. No, I don't have it.
Yeah, he did issue a new letter. I'm sorry that
Okay.
wasn't included in the packet.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
I don't have any questions. And at this point in time, I don't believe that there's anybody signed up for this public hearing. If you don't have to have signed up, if you would like to address the board on this public hearing, you may come forward, state your name and address, and you will have 5 minutes. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Kevin Carter. I live at 2601 Yellow Sulphur Road here in Christiansburg. I have a couple of pictures with me because I didn't want to
Is this,
take too much time.
I don't mean to take your time. Is this on this development, sir?
I know, I'm sorry. I thought I misunderstood.
No, this is
I
just
thought-
on this public hearing right now.
Okay, I'm very sorry.
No.
I'll be back.
Yes, you're going to have public address. This is just for this public
Okay.
hearing. And you're happy to address the
It
board?
looks nice.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board before I close this public hearing? Seeing no one coming forward, I'll go ahead and close this public hearing. Wait, excuse me, is there someone?
No.
No, ma'am. This is for the public hearing on this issue, okay? Folks are going to have the opportunity to address the board at public address. All right.
Mr. Chair, if
Yes.
nobody spoke against this, could we move forward with it tonight to give them a decision?
I believe that we would, that's been our policy, is that nobody speaks out against it, and I haven't heard anybody speak out against this. So is there a motion to add this? I believe is it already added?
There's an ordinance
There's an ordinance
yes.
provided.
under this item that we can add to new business if the board desires.
Is there a motion to add this to new business?
Motion.
Second.
And I think Steve Fidzikowski seconded that
Tried
one.
to get in there.
Okay, and so there's a motion by Supervisor King, a second by Supervisor Fidzikowski. This is just to add this to new business. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Chair Tuck?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, next item is public address. This is the opportunity for the board to listen to each speaker. It is not necessarily the opportunity for us to respond back to you. We will ask that you state your name and address. We ask you to refrain from clapping or cheering to allow the opportunity for the next speaker. There's several folks that are signed up. Mr. Carter, you're first on the list. Please come forward and state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you.
I also want to make sure you understand that the other item on Clay Street, and somebody asked that question, this public address is the time for you to address the board. There will be no other opportunity to address the board before we vote. And so if you want to address the board on especially on the Clay Street issue, you need to do it during this public address. Mr. Carter. Thank you, sir.
I did bring a couple of pictures. They're numbered so that I can make some points. Sorry, I don't have a fancy presentation.
Thank you.
Took those pictures on the way to the meeting tonight. As I mentioned, I live on Yellow Sulphur Road, which is under construction right now. We have been the owners of that property for 38 years. And those many years ago when I didn't have this white hair, we met with Ann Carter, who I think was on this board. Is that
Town
correct?
council.
Town council, okay. And she assured us 38 years ago that it would be paved 3 years hence. So most of the people in that room are no longer with us. But finally, something is happening there, and I'm very pleased that something is happening. I do have some issues that I'm worried about, primarily safety and whether the money is being taken care of properly. The first picture that I've presented to you is a picture that I took this evening that shows that a ditch has been established on the uphill side of the road, and there's basically a very steep bank with no shoulder on the other side of the road. That has always kind of been the case, although we didn't have the ditch. So the ditch has taken some of what has always been too narrow a road in the first place. Then the road has been elevated by additional dirt and gravel, which has also made it more narrow. And we have a longer bank to slide down or flip your vehicle over. The second picture there shows the passing width, and with this increase in the road, with this improvement in the road, the speed is going to be increased. That road, I have had a great deal of history with that road, watching people slide over that bank onto Chuck King's property, farmland on the right in those pictures. And it's a road that now, with speed increased and width reduced, I think it's incredible that a school bus will still go down that road. I have, and most of my neighbors have, dual-wheel trucks. We're all good rednecks. We've got trailers and trucks, and a school bus and nothing can pass one another in some places of that road without a very imminent danger to somebody going off the edge of the road and meeting whatever disaster awaits them. The third picture, the circles that you see on that picture as a red dot, which I'm assuming was done today, is what is the edge of the road. So essentially you can see that there is no shoulder. The fourth picture is is hopefully a picture that shows what a steep bank we have off the edge of that road as well. So what my point is that I would love it if we could somehow figure out how to have a decent shoulder on that road so that less people end up over the edge of it, and perhaps a guardrail. The second point I have to make is about money. I've been a contractor for nearly 40 years, and I've been watching this road, the progress of the work that's going on the road a few times a day, at least twice a day, but oftentimes more than that. And the fifth picture points to what a comedy the progress is that's going on in that road. It shows a picture of a sign that says "End road work." 25 feet later, it says "Road work ahead." That's not just one day that's happened. That's basically happened through this whole project. And most days on this project, it started off with someone putting signs out, and then no one is there all day long. So I don't know what's happening to the money, but the length of the road has been reduced.
Sir, your 5 minutes are up. Thank you very much. And we'll get some information to you from VDOT. All right?
Okay.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
The next two speakers look to be the folks from the New River Land Trust, and I saw them leave, and they said that they wanted to speak about the land trust, so I'm going to assume. Yeah. So the next speaker, I'm skipping over Mr. Eustace and his group, and Bill Drummond is the next speaker. Mr. Drummond, would you please come forward and state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Bill Drummond. I live at 201 Woods Edge Court. I want to talk about the proposed rezoning, in particular with respect to the density that we're looking at there. Like the planning staff did, I want to go back to the 1982 contract, which does reference 250 units, with possibly the last 50 being on this piece of land. What I want to point out there is that contract was for providing of septic services and water. It was not really a planning document. The real planning that was done, or I think that's relevant, was what you have in your comprehensive plan for the county. And with that, just to sort of read back your own proposal to you, the urban expansion areas are to ensure that proposed development is compatible with existing communities and uses and is designed to minimize any negative impact on existing neighborhoods. New development should be designed to provide a seamless transition from the existing development to the new. Particularly looking down a little further, I see that areas designated as urban development areas are expected to accommodate a range of development densities, in particular including 6 townhomes per developable acre. Going back to the 82 contract, another thing with the 82 contract is it does set aside a buffer zone of 1.3 acres. I understand that the county has received a memo from the town that they would see any development of that buffer area as being very problematic, and that would include even deeding into that area. The planning staff also referenced some areas in the neighborhood as having 12 units per acre. And the only place there that has 12 units per acre is over in Windsor Hills, which certainly nobody in Cedar Orchards sees as being part of the neighborhood. There's just a small area that touches on the property that's subject to rezoning, but it's an area that's very undeveloped, and it's all on the other side of the ridge. It's not in the neighborhood. I would like to do a comparison with the Woods Edge community where I live, which Woods Edge is on 4 acres, We do have a total of 24 units, or 6 acres per acre, or 6 units per acre. I've been told that a more relevant measure is the number of bedrooms. We have 66 bedrooms, actually with a total of 36 residents. So it is not a densely populated area. I want to compare that with Apogee, which they have 3.7 acres that are developable. Of that, they're looking at, on just a plain units-to-units basis, 141% of the number of units that we do at Woods Edge on a smaller piece of property. If you look at it in terms of units per acre, they're actually at 9.18 units per developable acre. In terms of bedrooms, they're looking at 121 versus the 66 that we have. That's 183% of the density that we have in Woods Edge Court. So that's just a comparison of where they are, and we don't see any way that that level of development and that level of density can be seen as compatible with the cedar orchards in general, even with Woods Edge, which is the most densely populated part. So we do ask that you decline based on the program or the plan not being compatible with the neighborhood. It's not compliant with your own comprehensive plan. Beside that, you have signatures of over 350 citizens who object to this development. So respectfully request that you decline.
Thank you. The next speaker who signed up, and again, you don't have to be signed up, and this is the last speaker who signed up, is Debbie McDowell.
Hello, I'm Debbie McDowell, 1213 Cedar Orchard Drive East, and I apologize, my daughter has shared her late summer cold with me. Hopefully we'll get through it. I also would like to ask for the denial of this rezoning. Some key points that I feel we've brought up over this time period that we've been working on this is the neighbors from the surrounding neighborhoods of this property have shown that we do not feel that this rezoning would fit with what we have there right now. We feel that this type of townhome for Blacksburg and the county is not necessary. Maybe more small, affordable, single-family detached housing would be more appropriate for this space. I think there's a huge possibility of college students coming into here just because you never know once you build something who will come and buy it. And there's a very large possibility of parents of students coming and buying these and letting their students live there. Even though the hope is that it's not, we live in a college town, there's just a high probability of that. And also as a parent, the safety of our roads, especially Clay Street, is a big key point. And I just feel like everyone who's come has asked for the denial of this rezoning, and that's what I ask, is to deny this rezoning. Thank you.
Now that is all of the folks that signed up, but I'm going to ask anyone else who would like to address the board to start coming forward and having a seat. Yes, sir, I'm going to take you, but then I'm just going to take you in order that you've come up here and taken a seat. Sir, you are first up. Please state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Gordon Engelbrecht. I live at 404 Ridgeview Drive in Kessler Park subdivision, and I'm asking you to deny the rezoning request, and I'm strongly opposed to it. My main concern and the highest priority for me, and what I feel should be the priority for planning and for boards of supervisors, is our public safety. And we've identified with documentation that we have traffic safety problems that originate from 2003 in the area between Harding Avenue and Clay Street. And there's been plenty of people who spoke about the hazards that are on Clay Street itself. And there's been an emphasis that this is not going to affect other areas but Clay Street. But half of the town is likely to come in on Harding Avenue and cut across Fincastle and come into Clay Street that way in the area. And there's no sidewalks, There's public parking on both sides. The streets aren't that wide. It's a terribly dangerous public safety issue, and it has not been adequately addressed by the Planning Commission or by any of the conversations I've heard. The old zoning is really obsolete from the 80s, because since then hundreds of houses have been put up there, and that has used up the infrastructure that's already there. We can't go back 30 or more years and try and add on the numbers that were generated back then. That doesn't even fit with the comprehensive plan. They're talking about construction over 2 or more extended years, and the kinds of traffic that that's going to generate in addition to what's already there. It's going to be a different kind of vehicles. They're going to be wider, they're going to be bigger, and it's going to be for an extended period of time, and that just adds to our safety problems. Rentals are not compatible for this neighborhood. There's very few rental properties up there, and we like a stable, long-term community that takes an interest in their properties. If the property owner has this price too high, that it sounds like it's not practical to use this for the current zoning single family, that's not our problem in the neighborhood, and it's not your problem in the government. The person has to decide whether he wants to sell it or not at a price that the market bears. That's what we're here for. Capitalism, we all believe in that. The previous planning has been inadequate, and now we're trying to move on and add hazards in addition to the hazards we already have, without taking care of the things that have been remiss about trying to address the problems that have existed for 15 or 20 years. Why don't we just go back and start fixing things before we start adding on to the problems? And if we remain at single family, it's automatically not going to be the level of problems that we would have if we go to this multiple family type of development. That's pretty much all I have to say, and I hope that you put public safety as a much higher priority, because I feel there's been a real lack of concern, not only now, but for years. And it's time for us to do something to correct this before we start adding more problems. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, would you please come forward and state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Board of Supervisors. My name is Romay Walpole. I live at 609 Leisure Lane at Cedar Orchard. I'm here to refuse the rezoning of Clay Street for the same reason, for safety concerns. I ask you, our Board of Supervisors, to take the safety of Cedar Orchard's residents into consideration. And I ask you to deny the rezoning until the safety concern is addressed and the improvement of the specific part of the K Street is made. From my personal experience, this part of K Street is not safe, even without a substantial expansion. Myself, my neighbor down the street at 505 Leisure Lane, up the street at GG Drive. Our neighbors at 1200 Cedar Orchard, as well our neighbor at Wood Edge 2520, they all have spoken up, or we have present our documentation about the accidents we have involved. The medical bill of our neighbor's murder was also submitted to our last meeting. So this accident involved a car of our neighbor was totally wrecked, and a hip of the murder of our neighbor was totally replaced, and tens of thousands medical bill. Please bear in mind those are the non-reported accidents. From a spreadsheet pulled out from our county's website, these parts of history also involve consistent crashes in 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018. So for the safety of our residents and of our community, I respectfully request our Board of Supervisors, please consider denying the rezoning until the safety concern has been addressed. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Ma'am, please state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Wei Zheng. I'm living in 1210 Brockton Street at Cedar Orchard. Here tonight, I just want to let you know we are not here to anti-develop of this land. Our main concern is safety. Most people don't realize, the Clay Street is dangerous. But the people in our neighborhood, we realize dangerous. There are two reasons. One is because lots of the incident didn't end up get report. So you don't see it on the, from your data. The second reason, is because the people in our neighborhood, people like me, we know the Clay Street is very dangerous, so we drive very carefully, on that road. So that's two things I want to let you know. It's the Clay Street is very dangerous now, so please don't make it like more dangerous. So I respectfully ask you to refuse the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure which one of you got here first, but there you go. Come on up and state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Beverly Walters, and I live at 400 Ridgeview Drive. And I want to thank the board for their careful consideration of this. I know you've had a lot of input, but please think about this before you vote. Our property backs up to the buffer of this property. I'm speaking tonight both for myself and my husband, who was trying to get here, but he was unable to get here tonight. My concerns are the safety with the entrance being on Clay Street, the density of the property, the continued protection of the buffer, which I'm just not sure how we will continue to protect the buffer, but that is very important, and the noise from the prospective students. Our neighborhood is not an extension of Virginia Tech. And so now I would like to read to you from a statement that my husband prepared. His language is maybe perhaps more forceful than I would put it, but my sentiments do agree with his. The function of government is to protect the common good. In asking you to oppose this proposed rezoning as currently constituted, this is exactly what we are asking you to do. A series of good decisions by this board has created the neighborhood we all love so much. It should be clear to you that all of the current residents of that neighborhood view the proposed development as adversely affecting their quality of life. That we view it as a proposal that will benefit a few, but adversely affect the common good. This is the last piece of the original property to be developed, and hence your last decision that affects this neighborhood. Do not let your last decision undermine all of your good previous decisions. Do not let the development of this last piece of land reduce the quality of the wonderful neighborhood that your previous decisions have produced. The objection to the rezoning application stemmed from two ways that the development of this property differs from everything else in the neighborhood, and specifically differs from existing townhome developments. Mr. Drummond, and I won't repeat all of the statistics, gave you an overview of the density. The density is quite a bit more than what is in Woods Edge or the rest of the orchards. Too many units are being packed into that space, which lies between the single-family homes of Kessler Park and Cedar Orchard above and beside it, and the townhomes below it. What is proposed is not compatible with what is around it. And if built as proposed, it will have a negative impact on the lives of all the people who have invested in and live in this neighborhood. You've heard about the many specific negative impacts over and over again. This is a beautiful piece of property. As the last piece of the puzzle of Cedar Orchard, it deserves something much better than what is being proposed. The second difference is the large number of 4-bedroom units. If the proposal is approved, the neighborhood will end up with 21 4-bedroom units, 19 of them on this property. That is a striking difference. Its justification depends entirely on the applicant's argument that there's a market among young professionals and retirees for 4-bedroom townhomes. If you do not, this is my husband speaking, if you do not verify this assertion with others in the real estate business in the area, you are not doing your job. But I think it would be awesome if you could verify this. which I don't think you'll be able to do. But I predict your answer that you will get is that this claim is false and that these units are clearly designed to be student rentals. What other market is there for a dense complex of 3 and 4 bedroom units if the young professional retiree market does not manifest itself? I cannot find a single young professional or retiree who views the units proposed as somewhere they would want to live. Thus, I remain fearful this development will become student housing, no matter what the applicant's intentions are, and the applicants will not rule that possibility out. Student housing is not compatible with the rest of this neighborhood, and clearly would have many adverse effects on the lives of the current residents, including threatening the investment in the neighborhood, in their homes that this neighborhood represents. Harm would befall the common good to the benefit of a few. Protect the common good. Vote against this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, please come forward and state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Brian Chang, 2662 Blossom Trail East. You've heard some of the concerns from my neighbors in regards to safety, density. I'd like to just say that their proposal doesn't really provide to the ground and the information that you need to make a good business decision. So I'll get into that by first stating my background. Prior to moving to Blacksburg, I managed a $500 million business, did finance and marketing for a Fortune 50 company. And if I had presented what they had presented last time to my board of directors, there's no way they would have been approved because it never covered any sort of probability metric, time to break even, the amount to break even, and the details to really make an informed business decision. You hear things like less than 100% volume, similar consistency. If you were in a business boardroom, would you think that that idea would get approved based on the grounds of rationale? So they also referenced that they had a multi-page spreadsheet detailing various business scenarios. So there's really 2 types of outcomes that can really play for this. If they have it all mapped out, and I'm assuming they do because they have multiple pages, why can't they share that information with us in terms of the minimum number to be profitable? They don't have to tell us how much they're making or anything, but they should know the time and the number of units to be profitable. If they don't know that information, you should ask yourselves, why would you approve a business case where the people proposing the idea don't even have the planning capability to be able to tell you that answer? So what I'd like to ask for is the details to support this type of proposal, which I haven't heard so far. And for homes that are selling in the mid-300s, I don't even know how much square foot is being proposed here. They haven't even covered that once in the couple of months that they've been proposing this offer. So I'd like just to reiterate that based on the grounds of irrational business case, that you don't have the information you need to make a good business decision here. That's for the sake of our neighbors.
Sir?
Good evening. My name is Dan Carter, and I live at 1000 Mill Court in Cedar Orchard. As well as my fellow citizens, I also want to thank each of you for your service to our county and for your time and commitment that you provide to us to help keep our county great. There have been so many very strong reasons for not approving this rezoning. And I've been to both of the planning commission meetings and both of the Board of Supervisors meetings, and I've heard many people speak against this project, and I haven't heard anybody outside of the developers speak in favor of it. So I really think it should be an easy decision on your part to deny it. But in addition to the concerns that have been voiced during the past meetings and tonight regarding the density, the safety, water surface problems, the road problems, my concern is that there are too many variables or unknowns that can cause issues with the proposed development. First, Were the members of the Planning Commission misled by the information presented by the developers at the second public meeting when the developers presented their first revised proposal, which included many changes that seemed very positive and I think had a very strong impact in the commissioner's decision to approve the project? However, what concerned me at the last meeting was that one of their proposals that they had given at the second public meeting with the commission regarding a garage to be part of the townhouse unit, there was some conflict between the developers and their engineer about, did we really say that or didn't we say it? And that created quite a bit of angst for me as to were any of their revisions serious revisions and really for the improvement of the project. My other concern is that we have here a new developer. These three guys, they seem like great people to me, but outside of one of their the members being experienced with some developing in Florida, they really have no experience developing projects here in our county or in the state of Virginia that I'm aware of that can give us any track record for their earnestness in making this project a project that is compatible with the community. And here we have one group that's challenging long-standing zoning and 300 or more families that have lived in the community. They're coming in, causing a request of you to make a major change in the zoning to complement their request to build a project that really isn't compatible. So we're faced with 3 businessmen influencing 4 members of your board or more with vague promises that can force their desire to prosper and create some negative impacts for hundreds of citizens, both financially and safety-wise. The true cost, we really have no idea what it's going to be to the citizens because of future tax increases to build the infrastructure that's necessary to provide space in the schools and to provide police patrols to make sure that 25-mile-per-hour speed limit is enforced. So again, the variables that are really unclear is at best a reason for delaying the decision and most likely a reason for denying this rezoning. And finally, thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, sir. Sir? Again, if there are other speakers, I see that 2 ladies have come forward. If there are any other speakers who wish to address the board, please come forward and have a seat. Sir, please state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Maynard Hoover, and I live at 2661 Blossom Trail, and I'd like to speak in opposition to this proposal. I do not believe that the developer has done their due diligence for this project. We, as Brian said, we haven't seen any type of floor plans. We haven't seen any square footages. We have seen nothing like that. All they have right now is a concept, and that's quite frankly not good enough for this neighborhood. As it stands right now, with no square footages, no architectural plans, nothing, they can change their mind at any time, and there would be no recourse against to them. They could just make a change whenever they felt like it. And I feel like there should be much more rigor attached to this project than what we currently have. I do not think that they should be given a blank check to make any kind of change they feel like it whenever they feel like it. Nextly, they say that these are going to be $350,000 plus luxury townhomes. Well, I don't believe there's a market for luxury townhomes in the Blacksburg area costing this much money with no garage. If I were going to be paying this kind of money, I would want a 2-car garage. So, and as far as it goes, the developer has already changed their minds on the garages twice. First, they were not going to put garages. Then after the second planning commission meeting, they were going to put garages. Now after the first meeting with you guys, they said, no, we're not going to do that. If they can flip-flop back and forth like that anytime they feel like it, that gives me great pause. That really raises a lot of red flags as far as I'm concerned. And nextly, what if they can't sell these units at $350,000? Well, they could reduce the price, and then that brings the student housing market into bear. And that's, again, that's going to hurt all the existing property values, and that's going to result in a loss of revenue to the county. And so, as you have well know, there has been no one speak up in favor of this project. So, in my opinion, if you approve this, you're going to be governing against the will of the people. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Ma'am, please come forward and state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, and my name is Chun Xiang Wang. I'm living in the 1211 Broxton Street. And I'm here tonight to sincerely ask you to refuse the rezoning. And you've already heard a lot of my neighbors' concern already, so I don't have to say that. But I have one thing I want to ask you. Please, to think about this. If you are living in the cedar orchard, and your grandchildren and your spouse, your daughter or your son living in the cedar orchard, will you still support this rezoning and to build something is not compatible with the neighborhood? And I purchased my house and last year at December I moved to this new neighborhood. I really love it. But if I know there will be this kind of building built up in the last year, I will definitely stop my purchase. So I want to share what I'm thinking. That is something will influence someone else. Like the townhouse home, this price, I have a visitor come to visit me this summer, and they're my very close family member. They said, oh, that's good news. Can you purchase one for me and just rent it? That is exactly what they said. They said the 350,000. That's okay. So this is not the parents, not like the parents probably want to invest for the students. So please think about. Ask yourself from the bottom of your heart, if you are one of our neighbor, will you support this proposal? Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, please come forward and state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is UC Kang, currently living in Cedar Orchard. We really like this neighborhood. It's very quiet, less traffic, safe for the kids to play outside, and a nice mountain view. So most importantly, this area is a family-oriented community. We love it. Again, we are not opposed to the new townhouse building. We just hope the new townhouses would be comparable to the existing orchard, both in density and quality. Based on the data presented in the last meeting, we don't think so. It's way over. And in this revised plan, there's a very small open area in the center. The townhouses are very close to each other and has no car garages. So with these limitations, I doubt this townhouse can be sold to the target families with decent price, such as 3,300K, sorry. Yeah, in this southwestern mountain area. So it's not like in big cities like in DC, in New York. In there, the high-end townhouses are okay for sale. But in here, I would have a question mark. You may end up with renting to the college students. That's my concern. So thank you for your consideration.
Yes, ma'am. Please come forward, state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Rachel Stanley, and I live at 407 Cedar Orchard Drive. And I just wanted to say that I agree with everything everyone said already, especially Mr. Drummond at the beginning. I think this is just too dense for our area. And I wanted to add that I feel like Clay Street is already really unsafe. It doesn't have sidewalks. People walk on it all the time with their dogs, and kids ride bikes, and it's a lot of traffic. Cars come down that hill really fast. And I think we need to not add to the traffic problems on Clay until we stop and maybe have a meeting with VDOT and address the traffic concerns and safety issues that we already have. And I really feel like this development is going to make it a lot worse. So I urge you to please either postpone the vote or to deny the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, please state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Eric Stanley. I also live at 407 Cedar Orchard Drive. I admire the time that you guys put in on the Board of Supervisors. It occurs to me as I come up to speak tonight that I do not think that I can do what you do. I don't know that I have the patience. So I admire you guys for that. My view of the Board of Supervisors is that you guys, caring the way you do, must genuinely want to act in the best interest of the residents of Montgomery County. And I think that part of that is to foster a sense of community. I think this project has really ignited a community. This is a community that has come out and been very outspoken against this project. So I hope that tonight, as you cast your vote, you will vote with the community that you serve, the community that you represent, the people that vote for you. There is no one among us this evening that has spoken in favor, and I respectfully request that you all decline the rezoning. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emily Pote, and I live at 214 Woods Edge Court. And I like to consider myself an eternal optimist. I try and always look at the positive side of things, and I've been trying to rack my brain what good has come out of this whole process that has been very stressful. And we have gotten a lot closer to our neighbors and met a lot of great people that we would not have otherwise met. In fact, we've done a lot of what I call garage drinking, where one of our neighbors will open up the garage, put out a couple of lawn chairs, camping chairs, and we'll all drink and talk about what's going on, particularly this rezoning request. And so, in a good way, I'm glad that I've gotten to meet my neighbors. But what that also reminds me of is the number of people that have come out against this rezoning. And not to reiterate what many people have said before, but not a single person, let me repeat that, not a single person outside of the developers have come and spoken for this rezoning. So I implore you, please do not rezone this. I'm not opposed to development on this property. I am opposed to this specific development on our property because of the density. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Sir?
Well, I'm here again, and I want to shock the group a little bit. The current entrance is not a possibility from an engineering point of view. So I say my conclusion is that it must be moved, and I will give you the justification for that, okay? I'm an engineer. I've been working for United Technology for many years in aerospace, so I know a great deal about engineering and what is possible. The concern that I have is the intersection sight distance. And that's a very important point, because if we don't have adequate sight distance, then the intersection can become a very, very difficult situation. In the highway safety plan, the state strategic highway safety plan, they say that the intersection distance is especially important since it creates the inherent possibility for conflict between all road users, vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists. So we must ensure safety at that intersection. Currently, the statement that has been made is that the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit will ensure that the minimum distance is preserved. Now, that 25 miles per hour assumes that there are no violators, that everybody will adhere to that 25 miles per hour. To the extent that that is wrong, and there is significant indication that the recorded speed historically is where do I have that now? It's 31, historically 31 miles per hour, and that's based upon an 85th percentile. So that does not even include all the violations. So considering that 85%, it's still 31%, 31 miles per hour. And if you look beyond that in terms of, suppose that we say that the reasonable speed is something in the neighborhood of, say 35 miles an hour, 10 miles over the speed limit, the time that it takes, the situation for a distance of 280 feet, the distance or the time is 7.6 seconds on a 25 mile per hour speed limit. And if the available time, considering 10 miles mile per hour over the speed limit, the time that is available is 5.5 seconds. That means that when people first notice that there is an incident at the intersection, they have 5.5 seconds to respond to that and to prevent an accident. Now that is a very, very difficult thing to say. So we must ensure that really that the intersection must be moved to ensure that the time that's available is at least equal to what they currently say is what do we say here? Was the 25 miles per hour at 280 feet is the time for that is, let me see, 7.6 seconds. So we want, they're currently saying 7.6 seconds is acceptable. And if you think in terms of all the possibilities for higher speeds, and especially students and what have you, high-speed violators, they have to knock that down to 5.5 seconds. Now, if you think that 5.5 seconds is sufficient for somebody to respond, to notice the possibility of an accident, and to then bring their car back down to zero, it's not likely. The only way to achieve this is through moving the entrance, and that is impossible because it really means that this cannot proceed.
Sir, your time's up.
I wish I had more time, and I wish I was a little younger.
I think we all wish we were a little younger.
Thank you.
Sir, I didn't catch your name and address. Could you, sir?
I'm sorry.
We didn't
My
catch
hearing
your
is
name
terrible.
and it's okay. We didn't catch your name and address. Can you provide that to us? Your name and address.
Oh, of course.
It's okay.
William Huber, 1207 Cedar Orchard Drive East.
Thank you very much. All right. Is there anyone else before I close public address that wishes to address the board? Seeing no one coming forward, what? Is there somebody? Oh, okay. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and close public address. Some of my board members need to take about a 10-minute break. Is that what I'm seeing? 10-minute break?
He says an hour.
I understand he says an hour, but we're taking a 10-minute break. And we'll get started back at 5 after 9. Thank you. Go ahead and reconvene this meeting. Next item on our agenda is work session. Is there a motion to go into work session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Biggs, second by Supervisor King. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Ms. DeMoss?
Aye.
Chair Tuck?
Aye.
7 ayes.
That was a little loud.
All right. Well, let's start off with the carryover letter. And I know that Dr. Meyer is here.
Chair Tuck, members of the board, Mr. Meadows, you have a letter tonight requesting that the carryover funds from the school division come back to the school division, the letters from the school board. Before I have Mr. Krantz get into the details of the carryover, I will say that from the funds that were allotted to us last year, all but $387,000 was spent. This past year, most of what is carried over are encumbrances, grants, and money that we did not anticipate coming to us from the state at the end of the year because of our increased enrollment during the year. But Mr. Krantz, our assistant superintendent, will give you some details.
Good evening. So you can see from our revenue, we generated $1.3 million above, primarily in the state. That was because of the increase in our student count. Our count compared to what we had budgeted was 187 students higher, which was a 2% growth rate. That growth occurred primarily in the Christiansburg strand. In addition, our expenses came in less. Actual expenses were less than the budget. Difference was $387,985. The $2.6 million of encumbered COs is something we carry over from year to year. We are requesting tonight your approval on the use of our carryover funds as follows. Medicaid carryover, which is part of our federal title programs. There's not much we can do there. That's something you see normally about $420,000 year to year. It's a little bit higher this year. We have a PBIS grant that will carry over into next year, and also a SPED grant that will carry over, and those are generally pretty standard items as well. The things that are up for kind of discussion would be to continue where we want to replace 8 buses per year. We have 130 buses in our fleet. Right now, our average age of our fleet is less than 10 years because of what the administration and the board and the school board and the board of supervisors have done. And right now, we have a relatively nice fleet. The bus age is still 15 years is the recommended use. And today, we don't have, to my knowledge, any buses that are over 15 years of age on the roads. This would get us back to the 8. 2, we want to start addressing some capacity issues that are in the Christiansburg strand. We have following branch that we have the dedication in September. We had 18 classrooms there. Today, that school has a number of classrooms that are empty. So we want to begin to reallocate the assets with the students within our district, not only where they're at today, but also where we project them to be going forward in the future with our assets. And where our intent, as we'll go through with the 50,000, is that is there not to spend and to have, we just spent $50,000. This is to develop the plan. But the plan is of the administration. It's not going to be the consultant's plan. It's the administration's plan, and you'll see that in a second. We need to complete it. We talked about CHS. We're in phase 2 of the project. Phase 1, all that's left is putting the track down. We believe we'll put that track down the week of September 14th. Once the track's installed, then phase 1 is complete. We talked about the fact that we are over budget. Phase 2 is the one that really brought it up to light. This additional funds will allow us to complete phase 2, which is the softball field, its lighting, improvements to the baseball from as far as bleachers, a concession stand and restroom that's never been out there for both baseball and or softball, and complete some fencing around the whole entire project. We are working diligently right now on phase 3, which is the football concession stand and game day locker rooms. And right now we've gotten that where we were budgeting that initially about $2.2 million, and we're coming in right now at about 1.8. And we continue to tweak that design to lower that cost. And then capital repairs and maintenance. Right now today, if you look at our top 3 projects, which are 2 roofs at elementary schools, as well as the HVAC system at one of our elementary schools, it's $1.8 million. That's not even trying to identify where our life safety issues are. And all 3 of those are life safety related issues. Some of our buildings are beginning to age and age very quickly. Example, KIPs. The mechanical systems in KIP are over 18 years of age. They're falling and falling drastically. We continue to replace compressors and fan belt motors on a regular basis. It's only going to be a matter of time that entire system is going to need to be replaced. And so what we're doing is going to develop a comprehensive plan for our administration, the superintendent, the school board, and then present to you as the Board of Supervisors that lays out by what we believe as a staff are our highest priority items from a life safety related standpoint. And then match what dollars we have available with our priorities are. And have a good solid plan that you're able to track and you can see exactly where the dollars are being spent. Getting into the $50,000, first, it's to assist the district from a technical perspective. The technical aspect of it I can run within the VersaTran, which is our transportation software. But if I were to do that, it would take me about 2 months to do that. I don't think the superintendent's going to allow me for 2 months to lock my door and just go do it. It's fun. I enjoy those type of projects, but I don't think that's where he's going to let me go. 2, we don't want to spend any of the money if we don't have to. I've got other needs, as we just talked about. I've got 2 roofs. I know those are going to have to be replaced. I know the mechanical system at the elementary school is going to need to be replaced. I've got needs, and those needs aren't going to go away. And I know there's a limited dollar. I understand that quite well. So the last thing I want to do is spend dollars that we don't have to spend. The last thing I want to do is not have a good return on the investment that we make. And so the intent is not to just give us the $50,000 and it's going to be spent, because that's not going to happen. The intent is to do it, assist us on the technical side, and then we'll evaluate and see where we're at. Lastly, the plan is the plan of the administration. It's not the plan of the consultant. That's not the job of the consultant, that's the administration. The administration's role is to present to our school board and then present to you as a board of supervisors. So we will not have, I haven't done it in any other districts. I didn't do it in the private sector. I'm too old to say I'm starting now letting consultants run my job. I'm not going to do it. You'll see me standing in front of you doing the presentations, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just the way I've always done it, and it's the way I believe it should be done. Because that's who you're entrusting, that's who Dr. Meyer's entrusting, and who the school board's entrusting to ensure we spend our dollars wisely. And I'm going to make sure we do it and do it well. So with that, I appreciate y'all's consideration of our request for the carryover funds.
I'll start off with Vice Chair DeMotts. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I am glad to see 2 things in particular requested with the carryover funds. One is the buses, and I feel like I bring that up quite often, but I know that we need to keep on schedule with replacing those buses, and I do not want to see children riding around the county in 15-year-old buses. I don't think that that's best for their safety. And then also, I'm pleased to see the request for capital maintenance. I know how important preventative maintenance is, and so And I know the schools aren't able to focus a lot on preventative maintenance items because of the maintenance items that are a little bit more in your face.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm glad to see that you're also requesting funds for that. Thanks so much. I really appreciate the information.
Thank you.
Supervisor Biggs?
Well, I want to thank you for, making it very clear what the money is going to be spent on. And looking at those priorities, all 4 of them, the buses and developing options to address capacity. I think about this a lot because of, just the sighting of what happened in the Christiansburg strand last year. And if we continue to grow with Virginia Tech, we're going to have capacity issues through all our schools. So I think it's critically important that we look at this and you get as much data and information as you can. Of course, the CHS athletic projects and the capital repairs and maintenance, they're just critical. And I agree with you. You have so many more needs than you can fulfill.
Right.
And thank you for presenting it in this clear manner.
Supervisor Bone?
How do you measure return on investment when you don't have?
Well, the way that I measure is you got a public dollar. It's a limited dollar. So I'll use a Richmond example. Was it best for us to spend $1.2 million on modular units, knowing that eventually you're going to have to build to meet the capacity? Or was it better off to go through with the plan and fund the construction side and use that $1.2 million someplace else? Because once I use that $1.2 million on modulars, which we did, for the next 20 years, it's not available. And that's where I use it from the return on investment. There's never going to be enough money to do with all that's needed in the public school system. It's just not going to happen. So we've got to be really frugal and really conscious of what our needs are and ensuring that when we spend it, we're spending on the item that's going to give us the greatest return. Now, is every part of every building equal? Yes, ma'am, they are. While my mother was in public schools for 40 plus years, we went to private school. But I'm a big believer that if I'm in a public school, we all should be equal. And there shouldn't be any differences. So we've got to make certain that with that limited facility dollar that we're going to ensure that when we spend it, it's wisely and we're not going to spend it foolishly, which results in an emergency over here. And then we're going to the superintendent and the school board and to y'all as the board of supervisors, creating an emergency that we could have done a better job if we managed our funds. So that's why I talked about the return on the investment.
So how did we end up with an overrun on the football field and track?
Well, I wasn't here at that time, so I don't want to speak out of school, but I think what it was is as the team was pulling everything together, I think some things got done maybe a little bit in a rush, and we didn't take that step back and just kind of look, because sometimes before you go do the development, you have to take a step back and say, how's this going to work? How's a fan going to walk into a gate? When they walk into the gate, where are they going to sit? Once they get into the gate, how are they going to get to their bleachers? How do I get to the concession stand? How is that line going to form? Is it going to back up to the field? I mean, you need to take a step back and just do what is and look at it. And I think just timing wise, and again, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. I just think honestly, that was one factor. A second factor is pricing. When we went out to bid on phase 2, we could not get an electrical contractor to give us a price. And the one that eventually did submit a number to us said, I don't want the job. So even if we had used that number, we still wouldn't have been able to complete the work. We needed to take a step back and really work the contracts. We're seeing with the tariffs taking place, playground equipment, for example, we just did a replacement over at Price's Fort. Something has now risen almost 25% from where it was a year ago. So we're starting to see an impact on what we're spending, and we believe it's tied closely to the tariffs that we're starting to see an impact on us.
And I concur with Supervisor DeMotts and Biggs. I like the presentation and the information that you provided us before the meeting. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thanks.
Supervisor Shepherd.
Just a general question. How many buses have you bought this year?
This year's right at 8.
So you've already
Yes,
got
sir.
8?
Yes, sir.
That's all I have.
7 regular and 1 special ed.
Supervisor King.
I appreciate the buses because everybody knows I'm a big advocate for buses. I mean, some localities this ride have got 200,000 or 300,000 miles on them, and I do appreciate that. The capital repair and maintenance, are you going to replace the 2 roofs? Is that what
Yes,
that
sir.
is? Okay.
I mean, that's my intent. Right now, they come in a little over $600,000, so we'll see what we can do to try to tighten that down. But also, we'll have dollars coming available within our FY 19 that we might be able to use because we need to get those 2 roofs done.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Supervisor Fidzikowski.
I trust that you all will spend that money wisely, and I think the superintendent is very lucky to get somebody like yourself that has experience and knowledge in all these areas. I'm sure it takes a load off of his plate, so that's all I got.
A few things. I want to thank you and the superintendent. I know Goonan is here as well. I know she's wearing 2 hats, I think, this evening. But I appreciate you talking about the study and addressing how you're planning on spending that. I think you went into a lot of detail, and I know it's only a $50,000 item, but there has been other studies that weren't well received and didn't utilize, and we also need to give this administration the opportunity to do it the right way, and it sounds like that's what you're going to do.
Yes, sir, we are. And that 50,000 is almost the equivalent of 1 position. That's the other way to look at it, and that's how I do look at everything. That's almost the equivalency of a position. So.
Does that spark any other additional questions? Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you being here tonight. And I'm having, is there a motion at this point in time to come out of work session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Biggs, second by Supervisor King. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair Tuck?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item is consent agenda. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Biggs, second by Supervisor King. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Sorry. Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Chair Tuck?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item is old business rezoning of Blacksburg LLC and the Maxwell. Is there any motions? Looking to Supervisor Bones since this is her district.
Are the developers going to stand up and talk about?
At this point in time, I was going to see if there was a motion and a second. And then if there was questions, and during the discussion, if there's some questions of the developer or the staff, I would try to address those after a motion and a second has been made.
I would like to make a motion to delay the vote so that we have a chance to listen to the developers, answer the questions that were posed to them last week, so that then we can decide whether or not we want to vote on that tonight.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion in regards to the motion to postpone the vote?
I don't see a need in postponing the vote. I think we've pretty much covered just about every topic on it that we could discuss. I think we need to vote.
Any other discussion? I'm of the same, was there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So last week we met with VDOT, and they wrote a good report as a result of the meeting. And I believe that we have one chance to make this development as good as it can be. And I personally believe that moving the entrance 150 feet down the hill so that the entrance is not on the hill would be a good idea. And also VDOT actually said putting an entrance on Cherry Street and the exit on Clay Street would be a good solution, possibility 2. And so I'd like to explore those 2 options. And I don't think either could be made with their present proposal.
Any other discussion, Bob?
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
Supervisor
I was
Day.
just going to say, I wanted to state why I was supporting Sarah in this. First of all, this is in her district. And so the people that have come to speak to us are people that live within her district. And I guess you guys know that I like to build consensus. And one of the things I've thought about, since there are some new things that have been suggested by the developers, some concerns that Sarah has, I don't see what would be wrong with delaying a vote on this, and she didn't put a time period on it, but I think that, I've appreciated so much working with the citizens, working with Steve Simonis, working with Brian and Ryan and Matt, and I think that, the citizens came and spoke tonight, but they have not, unless they looked at our agenda, haven't seen the new things that have been proposed or discussed the new things that have been proposed. And so I see it as sort of a win-win for both sides if there's extra time to sort of continue the conversation that's been going on. And I know that the developers have been looking at different plans to put on there. So that's why I wanted to support her in this. I'm trying to respect her district and her citizens because this is all in her district.
That actually kind of provides an interesting segue, you talking about consensus building. I want to be able to vote for this project, and we've had some conversations about some of my reservations about the project. We can get there, but we haven't gotten there. And so I'd be interested in continuing that conversation because I'd like to get there. So I would be supportive of moving this down the road a little bit so we can still talk. I'm not prepared to vote in favor of the project tonight.
I'd also like to say that because it's in my district, really, first off, I want to compliment the developers for being very open to talking to us. Certainly, we had no idea about the issues with the developers talking to the neighbors early on. And so the conversation with the neighbors happened quite late, and they were unable to get another conversation after that. So, but what it really brought to my attention is you think about this representative government that we're a part of. I'm in District A. No one has come to support this. I don't feel comfortable supporting this. Well, for a couple of reasons. One is the safety, and to see if we can make that entrance safer and better for people. So I believe, and so let me step back a second. When Yan wrote the article after the last Board of Supervisors meeting, I posted it like I post a lot of things on my supervisor Facebook page. And right out of the chute, a couple of people who weren't in my district said, I don't understand what the problem is with District A people and why they don't want this development. We need more development. And then I, in my so not few words, said, this is why. And then everybody said, oh. So that leads me to believe that if something like this happened in their district and they knew all the facts, they would support the residents. And I believe that would be the case in every supervisor's district. If the Shaw development had 300 people show up against it, would you put pause on that?
I don't think we have 300 people live in that end of the county.
That's not the point. But the point is, we would pause and say, okay, can we make this as good as possible? And I believe that if your constituents understood all the facts about this development or a similar development in your district that had the similar conflicts, you would take pause and try to build consensus and make sure that as many of the details that we can grasp right now are grasped. And we have not heard the answers to our questions, and the public has not had a chance to comment on that information. So let me make sure that another thing is VDOT came out and they said that there's some money, grant money out there that could be applied for that potentially could get a sidewalk for that street. So I'm gonna talk to you all about doing that, and regardless of whether this development happens. And when I complimented the developers, it was genuine. Matt, Brian, even Steve have done a fantastic job as far as being responsive to me. But I want to compliment the neighbors. The neighbors, even though they didn't invite me to their garage drinking parties, and now I know I have to show up at 5 o'clock every day. No. I want to compliment the neighbors for coming out and trying to help make this development as good as it can be. I know that in my neighborhood, we don't get a choice to decide what happens right next to us. But if we get a choice, we are getting to choose what's going to go into this parcel. Pausing for one meeting isn't too much to ask. So that's what I ask.
I do respect it. It's in your district. I really do. And everybody knows, we try to look at each other's district and make sure we get what the people want. But also you got to look, the developers, when they first started, they tried to meet with these people. They wouldn't meet with them. I mean, some of this stuff could have been hashed out way before all this.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, ma'am.
So the developers sent an email or communicated with Raines Real Estate, which manages the rentals, or a lot of the rentals in the orchards. And Raines, that's not their business. Their business isn't to organize a community meeting. So it went nowhere. So I don't know if the developers knew that they should try to contact the HOAs or the right people in the HOAs. So there's a lot of unknowns out there that, yes, I agree. The neighbors were resistant, but they weren't contacted for the opportunity to actually speak.
And I disagree with that. One, I've seen some of the emails. Somebody blind copied me on some. And I know that the developers were trying to reach out. After the initial meeting, the Planning Commission, they got the list of speakers, reached out to those folks who would speak with them. And so that's what they tried to do. Until your meeting at Bull and Bones, they continued to try to meet with folks. And I appreciate what you did in spending your time on a Saturday, but to characterize that they didn't try to reach out with them is not based on the facts.
I understand what you're saying.
And so I have to agree with Supervisor King in regards to that. There is a motion and there is a second.
I'd like to say one more thing.
Yes, sir.
The comprehensive plan that is in place now, it was before my time, before most of, I think Mary was the only one here when all that. if people has problems with that, I mean, I do say it with all due respect, the planning, GIS and all that, they just carry out what this board tells them, what the rules are. I mean, you know, I understand, you know, some of the emails and stuff that's went through. It was last at the planning and GIS department. They just do what this board puts in place. They don't make the rules, we make the rules. And I would ask each member here respectfully, if you think we need to change it, we need to have the majority of this board say we need to change it. And I just want to thank each and every one in the planning commission and GIS and all. Thank you for all you do. It's not your fault. This falls on us. Thank you.
I just want to add that I go back to, I want this to be a successful project for the developers. I really do, because I've gotten to know them. I think you know, they're on the verge of starting out and doing something in Blacksburg. But I also want it to be a successful project for the community. So I don't see why we wouldn't honor Sarah's request because it's in her district. For how you wanted, what, 2 more weeks, or you were thinking?
Yeah,
what,
till the next meeting.
till the next meeting. And I mean, I would support that.
I'd like to add a
I
comment.
was going to address it, but go ahead.
Oh, you can address,
No.
Mary.
You
Okay.
Go ahead then.
So I'd like to hear from the developers the answers to the questions that I had the last time, which included your marketing plan, reducing the number of units, and so on. I'd love to see what you brought.
And I'm looking to Marty. Right now, there's a motion to table it. There is not a motion to approve it. And so I'm thinking about trying to go through Robert's Rules of Orders. I imagine we're going to address it one way or the other. If the motion doesn't pass, then we're going to address it if there is a motion to pass the ordinance. And so at this point, I would just say, am I within my rights to say, go ahead and have the applicant come before and answer questions?
Yeah, I think it's all right.
Okay. Do you mind coming forward to answer some of Supervisor Bone's questions? Perhaps if they answer the questions, then you're not going to need to continue.
So we put together a presentation just based on the questions that came up last time, just to give some visuals, and we'll try to be as concise as we can. I guess relative to the deleting the units, we have made some additional proffers that we can get into, and I'm sure you've been provided, but our unit count remains the same. But just, that was the only question that's not going to be listed specifically on here. But, you know, there were some other things that I spoke with Supervisor Bond with directly that in the interest of time, I don't think we need to get into. So we just wanted to hit the most pertinent things that we thought were most important in making the decision here tonight. So these are the questions that we wanted to address. So we were asked to request the center line on Clay Street, which we have done. VDOT has confirmed that they are looking into that and evaluating our request, in addition to the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit sign being posted. We were asked to look at the HOA restrictions. We did review the Orchards Phase 3 HOA docs, the only one we had a physical copy of that we could review the entire document. There's a screenshot on the screen of the 2 sections that deal with restrictive occupancies, essentially no more than 3 unrelated parties, and leases must be more than 6 months, which we will be doing same sort of verbiage in our HOA docs. So the Apogee HOA docs will meet or exceed these restrictive occupancies. So a review of the garages. which Ms. DeMott's, Supervisor DeMott's, I know this is near and dear to your heart. So, you know, garages is the thing that we just as a group have debated and talked about literally the most since the beginning of this project. And I think, you know, the fact that Steve's statement to to the supervisors previously about the existence of garages, I mean, that's just indicative of how much of a debate was going on and the change of minds during the whole planning process. We were joking earlier, we're going to hang a scarlet garage door around his neck. But so it is something that we have hotly debated amongst ourselves. So we just wanted to kind of explain our thought process to you, and you know, just how we've been evaluating garages given the layout of what we're proposing. So first, just a note that our parking does exceed the code minimum, and garages are not required for RM1 zoning. And for the record, we are open to garages, and we're going to continue this conversation. But for a 25-foot wide townhome, garages have a very large impact just from an architectural standpoint. And we just need more time to study that during our architectural design phase. So our decision is going to be made on 3 factors. It's kind of the 3 factors that we've been kicking around and discussing this. You know, the architectural design, our passive heating goals and lighting, and storage needs for the townhomes. So architectural design. So given our conditions, garage doors very much dominate, you know, the architecture and do have a big effect on the curb appeal of the units, which would affect sales price and, you know, the attractiveness of the units. The photo on the screen is of Woods Edge, and I think there's no denying that given their architecture and their design, these garages are very prominent on these units. It's just not something that, from a design standpoint, that we particularly want. Works great for them. For us and our vision for our property, it's just not something that we're excited about. So one thing that this does is it pushes all your living space to the back of the units. And we feel it minimizes the sense of community, you know, because your living space is in the back. There's no real prominent front window to look out and see what's going on in your neighborhood because everybody's sitting in the back. And then another thing that it does is it creates, you know, you have a garage, which doesn't leave enough space for a living room in the front. It creates essentially an entrance hallway tunnel to get back to your living space, which affects the amount of light, you know, daylight coming through from the front of the unit. And to us personally, we feel like it creates a slightly less inviting feel. This is a 3D model that, you know, we showed some inspirational images last time. This is something that we put together, kind of pulling bits and pieces of, you know, those inspirational images to try to create, you know, a 3D composite of something that we envision. Ryan's going to talk a little bit more about that later. Passive heating goals. So passive heating is essentially buildings designed, oriented to capture more solar energy, you know, through windows and glazing during the winter months, absorb it into the materials used into the interiors, and that heat energy gets released throughout the day. It's something that it's been one of our goals from day one. Ryan built a place that was passively heated. So something that he kind of brought to the team, something that he was excited about, and he's gotten us very excited about it as well. So window orientation is a key part of creating a passively heated structure. And garages on the front of a 25-foot wide unit does drastically limit the natural light infiltration from one entire elevation of the front of the building. So, storage needs. These are some photos that we took from the surrounding townhomes. This is in the orchards. You'll notice that, you know, quite a few people don't park in their garages. They're single-car garages. They're fairly narrow. They're not easy to park in. You ding your doors up. It also minimizes the amount of storage that you can put in. And, you know, if you drive through, we did a drive through a couple other places, Shalai Court, Whitney Court, other places with these small single-car garages, and you see very much the same thing. You can park in them, or you can use them for storage. It's really not effective to do both at the same time. And from what we've seen, a lot of people generally use them, we think, as storage because a lot of people don't seem to park in them. So storage has been one of the main arguments that we've heard on the question of garages. Families need storage, therefore you must have storage for them. So the way that we're choosing to accomplish that is creating this is like a draft floor plan that we've put together, which shows a 13 by 8 foot storage area that's in the front of the unit. We think that this is a perfect space for trash cans, freezers, bicycles, things like that. It has a door out to the front area of the unit. And because we haven't eaten up a quarter of the first floor plan with a garage, we have space for a bedroom suite on the first floor. And because we have space for a bedroom suite on the first floor, it means we have additional space for storage on the second floor for things like linens and seasonal items and things like that. And it creates a space for a living room in the front of the unit. It creates, more chances for light, glazing in the front of the unit and the back to let light pass through the unit from front to back, which is something that we really like. Ultimately, we think that we'll be able to provide more square footage than a single car garage would allow for storage. And I realize that this is a different approach than the neighboring developers chose to do, but we think it works, and we just think it's a different mousetrap, that's all. So that's where we stand on garages. We're well aware of the benefits of having garages. I have a garage, I love my garage. My wife has to drag me out of it all the time, so preaching to the choir about garages. But we just wanted to give you some insight into, sort of the debate that we've had going on amongst ourselves up to this point regarding garages, and just, some insight into our thought process. And we're going to continue the conversation as we hire an architect and get into these architectural details. We may very well end up with some garages, maybe none. It's just something that we have not made up 100% decision on, and we're just not willing to proffer and commit to at this point in time.
So we also wanted to just clarify our design a little bit. Looking at our 3D modeling that we did, the windows are huge. From a curb appeal, from passive heating, from lighting inside, from putting the living room on the front. And I'm not going to go back to it. Match had an interior photo that we're looking at, that we're modeling after. And from my perspective, and I know it's opinion, but it's beautiful, just to have all that light pouring in your house. If you want blinds, put them up. But if you have a garage in front of your house, it's just, there's no choice. So if we put a garage on the front, it is going to completely eliminate our passive heating. And with resources in the world, a huge demand on them. We need to be aware of what we're doing and what we're building. Is this going to be here for the next 100 years? Let's build it to use 50% less electricity just based on the design. It doesn't have to have any mechanical system. So garages they ruin that for us to be able to do that. So we think the curb appeal is definitely much better too with windows. So we did a couple things. We were asked to kind of build a floor on what we would do. We revised our proffer to say 70% max vinyl siding. The orchards are around 80%, so that's 10% less than they are. Honestly, we hope to use no vinyl at all. We at least wanted to build a floor in to say it's going to be less than what they have. These are going to be 2-story units. They are going to be complementary to the existing Orchard Townhome development, both in scale and use of materials. And if you can look at this initial 3D model and think that it's not complementary to the photo that we showed of the garages in the front, then I don't know if we can win. Adding landscape screening between our townhouses, FG and Woods Edge, because that was a concern of the neighbors. We really talked with them about that. We met with them about that. And we're going to make sure that that's nice and they're happy with it. And then we did, we had these design inspiration photos. So again, this is just, we like bits and pieces of all of these. We wanted to show our 3D model. That's the direction we're thinking, but you know, will we steal the stone off of the bottom right one and the window layout of another one? We like a little bit of all of them. We're not in love with any of these. We want to create something that is our own, and we want to provide these to the architect to say, hey, with our input, let's do something really special. Be creative. Use our passive goals, and let's do something that's really nice. So, just wanted to show this just as a reminder of these all are multifamily that we're adjacent to. So we are still talking about townhouses next to townhouses. These are some of the concessions we made, just as a reminder too, because you know we have done a lot of these things, reducing units. And, we've added the bottom two, reduced the vinyl proffer to 70%. Again, we don't want to have any vinyl, but we're at least building the floor in. And we added the landscape screening. So those were two things that people wanted, that we heard. So we also wanted to just go through the project pros and cons from our perspective. So we comply with the comprehensive plan. We meet the needs of the urban expansion. We have planning department recommendation for approval. We have the planning commission recommendation for approval. It is additional tax revenue for the county. Jobs, design, engineering, construction, maintenance. Those aren't just temporary jobs. Those are jobs where people go from one project to the next. They live here, they stay here, they continue to build Montgomery County for us. It's important. Utility access, we're reducing the environmental impact because we do have water and sewer. We're not pushing this out to the county where we're going to have septic systems and wells. We're providing homes for 34 families that live very close to downtown in Blacksburg. We've added the school bus stop. We've added sidewalks. And our townhouses will help satisfy the needs for additional housing in Blacksburg. We're all very excited about this project, and we're excited about providing upscale housing opportunities for young professionals. The options for townhouses in and around Blacksburg that are not student-dominated are near non-existent. We searched current listings in Blacksburg here recently, and there are currently 2 townhouses listed for sale. 2. There's a demand, and it's needed. We think providing young professionals and young families an option like Apogee that is very close to downtown will ultimately improve the vibrancy and vitality of the town and the county. So what are the negatives? Density? We don't think so. We're 1 unit. We're less than 1 unit from the neighboring townhouse development. The entrance? VDOT has approved us for a 35-mile-per-hour entrance. It's 25 miles per hour on that road. We exceed the 35 mile per hour. Garages, you know, as stated before, we are going to continue to look at garages and work with our architect to try to make this work somehow. Will some of them have garages? We're going to try to make it work. We're not willing to proffer that. We still have to go through the architectural design phase. That's going to take months. That's 2 weeks is not enough. From last week, or even 2 weeks more, is not enough for us to have a finalized architectural plan. That's going to take a lot of time. And I'm just not sure that any of these, the density, the entrance, the garages, do any of these outweigh the desperate need for additional housing? We've all put a tremendous amount of time and work into getting to this point. And we appreciate all the time that you guys have invested in considering our application. I know you guys have been out there multiple times, phone calls, emails. But we have a request. For anybody that's willing to vote no tonight, we request that you at least tell us what tipped the scales for you to vote no. We feel like that there are many benefits that we've listed here for this project. And the cons, or the negatives, the drawbacks, are very, very few and are kind of nibbling around the edges to try to change something that we feel like we've worked really, really hard to create a lot of pros, to work with the neighbors, to give them concessions and try to meet them part of the way. And so we ask you of that if you are going to vote no tonight. So again, we sincerely appreciate your time. We know this has been a weight on everyone.
I know that Supervisor Bone has some questions. I know I normally go through a list, but I'm going to go ahead and let her start off with her questions.
And maybe it's a Marty or a Emily question. Deeding into the buffer zone, is there any new information about whether or not, for especially the townhomes that are closest to Woods Edge, but not facing Woods Edge? I guess it's going Windsor Hills. The backyard is on the apron of the trees in the buffer zone. And we get conflicting information about, oh, the town wouldn't let the deed go into the buffer zone. And then you also hear it can go into the buffer zone. Do you know what that is?
The way I read the agreement, it did require the buffer zone to be a separate lot, nor did it say you couldn't subdivide in the buffer zone. It just said nothing could be built, or there could be no structure within the buffer zone. And I talked to the town attorney, and he had the same thing.
Okay. Could you gentlemen tell us what you've built before?
You got a long list. You want me to go first? So, my dad was a contractor. I grew up riding around in his pickup truck in the summertime, helping him put on commercial roofs initially. Then he started building houses. I grew up on job sites, raking yards initially until they could work me up to totem boards, and then using a hammer, using a saw. That I grew up doing these things, growing up watching subdivisions in North Carolina get developed. Hundreds of homes go in on a piece of land, get turned into homes for families. I have either completely rotted or torn down 3 different commercial structures. I have remodeled or flipped 12 or 13 houses, one here in Montgomery County. I have built a cabin that is passively heated, that has triple pane windows, radiant floors, passively heated, super insulated, poplar bark siding. I mean, I've done lots of construction.
Great. I mean, take 1 minute to start talking about your experience.
Take 1 minute?
Yeah.
Okay. So I started out my construction career working as a civilian on the Navy base in NAS Key West. Did a lot of Navy base improvement projects there. From there I went on to a private company. We do a large range of construction management work. We do schools, we do convention centers, we do high-rise buildings, very large-scale projects. We just got awarded a $5 billion project, so it's talking a pretty big scale. So projects that I've worked on a hotel complex down in the Florida Keys, also a convention center, a big theater kitchen. I built a 42-story high-rise. I was a lead project manager in a 42-story high-rise for the same company. I've done a couple of very large-scale residences.
Any properties in Virginia?
In Virginia?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Okay. Brian, any construction?
All right. All right, my construction background is not quite as lengthy as theirs. These guys lean on me as it relates to the real estate market. I did grow up, my father was a contractor. I'm also a contractor. I flipped homes, yes, in Virginia. And my deal is the real estate market. They lean on me to say, hey, what can we build? What can we sell them for? So it's just an eclectic but very close-knit, well-tuned group of guys, and everybody has something special to offer. So they carry more of the construction background, and I carry the real estate professional side of it.
One of the questions that the audience had was, how are you going to protect the buffer zone? Can someone talk 30 seconds about that?
This question from the audience?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the guidelines are clear on the buffer zone. So our structures are actually spaced 10 feet off of the buffer zone. So we don't intend to impede on it in any way. It'll remain open space.
Are you going to tear down the fallen trees, or
Well, there is one fallen tree down right now that we
are you
will
going to
remove.
trim back any of the trees?
There's probably some trimming that will happen in certain areas. Just the units that are to the north. I don't see anything in that agreement that would preclude us from doing that whatsoever.
Okay. Ryan, you were there during the VDOT meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, the engineer said that based on 35 miles an hour, the people have 7 seconds until they reach your entrance. Is that correct? Do you remember that?
That was a calculation that we did when we went back at 30 miles per hour, 44 feet per second, and we calculated that. So don't remember the engineer saying it, but I know that we all had the discussion that night after the VDOT meeting, and I called them and conferenced and talked about how many seconds do you have to actually stop. And Floyd Street is actually about 100 feet less than that from the time you top the water tower to Floyd Street. Again, that's me stepping it off 75 yards, but we have 320 feet compared to 225. So.
And if you move the driveway 150 feet, that would be an additional 3 seconds or so. Is that correct?
I'm getting into the VDOT, but the hill continues to drop, and I think your sight distance is going to continue to move with it. I don't think you're going to get all of that. Some of it, more than likely, but I don't think you're going to get all of that. And I'm not the professional of really answering a question. I probably shouldn't.
Okay.
Sarah, I do remember him stating in that email that he had sent that 67 feet would be the maximum distance to move the driveway and actually gain anything once you go past 67 feet. Now you're encroaching on Cherry Street intersection, and the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You might pick up slight distance here, but then you lose it on the other end. So 67 feet would be the maximum to cure that wall if we could really move it and gain anything on the positive side.
I believe he said 150 feet, and I think it has to do with, you're starting from stopped at Cherry Street versus you're moving down Clay Street. But,
Do you want Steve to comment on that?
Sure.
I mean, Steve, do you have input on that?
No, believe me, I believe Ryan's correct, unless I'm missing from a different point here.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Sorry. If the entrance shifted by 67 feet closer to Cherry Lane, it would have adequate stopping sight distance for 40 miles an hour. And they did speak, I was trying to find that portion of the email, but there was a certain distance. Based on the analysis, any requested shift greater than 67 feet actually begins to have a detrimental effect in the opposite direction and would not be recommended by VDOT. So anything over 67 is not recommended by VDOT.
Okay.
And moving that 67 feet down would probably wipe out 3 units.
And is that possible to change without having to go back through the Planning Commission?
I can't answer that from a county standpoint.
Emily? Marty?
I would think probably not, because it'd be reduced density.
I'm sorry, could you...
I would say probably not have to go back to the planning commission. Because it wouldn't be a greater density, it'd be less.
Wouldn't be greater than... What did you just say?
Because the density would be less based on what Steve just said, that he would lose 2 or 3 units to move that in.
Oh, okay. So it's about the density as opposed to physically relocating it.
It's one of the important things you would look at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the board gets sent back to the planning commission.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Now, I did go out of order. Actually, I guess that would worked out perfect according to my chart. Supervisor Shepherd, do you have any questions of that?
I do not.
Supervisor King, any questions? Supervisor Fidzikowski, any questions?
All my questions have been answered. Thank you.
And Vice Chair DeMons?
I do not have any questions.
Supervisor Biggs?
No, thank you for that input.
All right, now I believe everybody's had the opportunity to speak. There is a motion on the floor to continue this matter over. There was a second to that motion. Gentlemen, if you want to have a seat, you can have a seat. You don't have to continue to stand up. There's a motion and a second. There's been a great deal of discussion. Is there any other additional discussion? I was going to state why I was not going to vote to continue the matter. If there's no other discussion.
I was going to state the same when we're voting. I was just going to say like 2 sentences.
Okay, and that's fine. I was just going to simply say that my reasoning is that we have listened to a great deal of information. We had roughly a 3.5, 4-hour meeting at the initial. We've had about another hour in regards to this. All of us have gone out to the scene or the site. Sorry, the criminal defense attorney in me kicks in and starts talking about scenes. That being said, I look at Mr. Simonis, and he is not here for free. He is charging them to be here. They have purchased the land, as I understand it. They are paying interest on it, and I think that we've gathered a tremendous amount of information, and I'm prepared to be able to make an informed decision this evening, and so I'm not going to be voting to continue it over. Now, does that create any other discussions? If not, Madam Clerk.
So now we're voting on whether or not to continue.
So a no vote means you do not continue it. A yes vote means that you are continuing the matter. Okay? Madam Clerk, would you please, unless any other, don't want to cut anybody off.
Okay, Mr. King?
No.
Mr. Vachikowski?
No.
Mr. Motz?
I would like to continue the matter, and the reason for that is because I would like to get to the place where I can vote yes for this. And we're not far, but we're not there yet tonight.
Okay. Ms. Biggs?
I vote to continue the matter because of what I've stated previously, to give Sarah the respect to her district with the maybe a little bit more, and then the public finding out about the 2 new proffers tonight.
Okay. Mr. Shepherd?
No.
Ms. Bone?
I would like to continue it. I feel obligated to my residents, and I appreciate all of their input and believe that we can get to a better yes.
Chair vote?
No.
Have 3 ayes, 4 no, motion fails.
Is there any motion in regards to approve the rezoning?
So moved.
Second. Motion by Supervisor Fidjakowski and a second by Supervisor Shepherd. Now, discussion on this motion. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I would like to say that I think Supervisor Bone has done an outstanding job representing her constituents. I don't know of anything else that she could have done to sway any votes one way or the other. I think she's done all that she can do. And now it's left up to this board to make this decision, and that's what we got to do.
I would second that. That being said, I'm putting a lot of faith in the developers. We're right now just in the rezoning phase. I think a lot of things are going to happen when it comes to the development itself phase. So that's my take.
Any other discussion?
I'd like to thank Member Bone for all her input she put. I know she's put a lot of time into this. And you know, I really appreciate all the hard work you do. I really do.
Any other discussion?
So I'll echo what everybody said, Sarah. You really have, I think, shown yourself to be an incredible asset to the people that you're representing. I can't even imagine how many hours you've put into this, but I do think that you've done a wonderful job. My struggle with this comes down to compatibility with the neighborhood. And in weighing some of the pros of the project and some of the cons of the project, I do think that the county should be looking at putting density where the infrastructure exists to support density. We don't have a lot of spaces like that, and that definitely is something that I think is very positive for your project. However, I think with that density comes an even finer eye to compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. I do think that the location is not ideal for students, but I do think that choosing not to have garages might encourage students because it might discourage families and it might discourage young professionals. We talked about where is my car when I'm at home. My car is in my garage. And I know a lot of people don't use their cars for that. Or use their garages for that purpose, but I think that that is something that is very important to a lot of people. And so that's something that kind of tipped the scales a little bit for me. I don't want to attract students into a neighborhood that has a lot of retirees and families into it, and I think it's very easy to distract or detract them from the neighborhood by making it look and feel more compatible with the rest of the neighborhood. Just looking at some of the other notes I made here to make sure I say everything that I want to say. I do admire the design aesthetic. I do admire wanting to passively heat the units. I think in this case, the adoration of the aesthetic might have interfered with the practicality of making it marketable for the people that you want to live there. I know a big garage door on the front of a townhouse is not attractive. I know that. I've lived in a big townhouse with a giant garage door on the front of it. I know it's not the prettiest thing on the planet, and having those big open windows is much more attractive, but there's going to be 3 cars parked in front of those big open windows. And so, you know, there's a little bit of a trade-off there for me too. You specifically asked what it is that's making it so we can't vote for this. And that's what's causing me to have a hard time voting for this. I just don't think that it's compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. And I know I don't have a great love affair with garages or anything. I know I'm talking about them a lot. But I think that's really where the fulcrum is in my decision. I think that would change who you're marketing to, who it's attractive for, and how that project would interact with the rest of the neighbors that already live there.
Okay,
Yes,
my
Supervisor.
thoughts. I think you guys know because I've been up front with everybody as far as trying to see what could be done to make it so it was a win-win on both sides. And I know that sometimes you can't always do that. So mine was a compatibility issue and trying to get more consensus with what you're putting there so that the neighbors feel more comfortable. And I realize that you can't go out and spend a lot of money and get your plans done. And a lot of, it's a lot of money up front. I get that. But I still think that for the success of you and for the success of the neighbors, I just wish that there could have been a little bit more time given. I like your thinking outside the box. As Supervisor DeMott said, with the passive energy, I like that. I like some of the things that I saw, but I'm just not there yet either. I'm not as hung up on the garage. I like the garage idea. I sort of like your storage idea too, but it's just the compatibility I'm just not sure about at this point.
At this point in time, I'd like to say a few things. One, a lot of times we're a Dillon Rule state and we don't have a lot of power as board of supervisors. The state holds it. But one of the things that they give us is the awesome, in my opinion, awesome responsibility of being able to dictate to other people how they can use their land. I own that land. You own that land. And to have the board of supervisors being able to tell you how you can use that land, in my opinion, is an awesome responsibility. In looking at that responsibility, that means that we have to base, in my opinion, our decision on laws and not on feelings and not on fear. So when I looked at this step, I started looking at the comprehensive plan. It is urban expansion. It is one of the few areas that the town of Blacksburg provides sewer out and water outside the town limits. There are not many of these, and they will not do it any further. So this is one of those locations for urban expansion. I look at our staff recommendation. I have great faith in Craig Meadows. He has hired Emily Gibson. They are professionals. I am a lawyer by trade, but do criminal defense work and courtroom work. I rely on their opinions. They are experts in the field. Craig's hired them because they are experts in the field. And when I look at that, it does not mean that they get to dictate the decision, but they can influence that decision, and they have. I also look at what the Planning Commission, they're made up of regular citizens just like the folks I'm looking out at. They're from all different walks of life, engineering, real estate, and the like. They made a decision 5-1. If it had been a closer decision, I would have even examined or maybe discounted their decision, but it was a 5-1 decision. I also look at the prior rezoning or prior zoning of this land and the fact that at one point in time there was anticipated 50 units being placed on this piece of property. It was pulled out. Why was it pulled out? It was pulled out because somebody wanted to do single family and have their business there. That decision changed. I look at the surrounding zoning. Is it comparable with proposed zoning, and is the proposed zoning reasonable? I believe it is. I looked and I've walked on the property. I've walked with and being escorted by residents, but I've also gone out there on my own. I believe and understand some of the things that the developer is talking about the large garages in the front. But I don't get to that point as far as dictating to them whether they're going to have garages on the front. I think that they're investing their time, their money, and their efforts. I don't have a right to look at their books. I don't have a right as government to dictate how much money they may or may not make. I looked at what the citizens have said. Initially, they received the advice to decline to meet with the developer. But when these developers heard their concerns, they didn't just ignore them. They were trying to be good fellow citizens. They reduced their density roughly by 10%. They changed the parking from a large parking lot to separate parking in front of each unit with some spillover. They removed the dumpster and they added garbage pickup. They changed the entrance from Cherry to Clay Street, and I had the opportunity to speak with Planning Commission, and we don't videotape those meetings, but it was clear that that was what the citizens were asking for. They changed it for individual lots when they were just one lot. They reached out to the speakers to try to address additional concerns. I listened to the citizens' concerns, specifically safety. Supervisor King has addressed that. The road has been described by many speakers as being dangerous, but we looked at the data. And many of you are aware the sheriff proposed a speed study out there. The average speed was right at the speed limit. You looked at what is the 85 percentile. It's at 31 miles per hour. VDOT, again, experts that we rely on, have said that the entrance is appropriate and safe, and actually has greater sight distance than what is actually needed. Density. It is slightly larger than Woods Edge. But I probably would have voted for the initial 38, not the 34. The lack of detail. I know that that's a concern of many citizens, but we don't, one, the concept plan is being proffered, but we don't require the level of other entities. But the citizens who have had their houses built have benefited because their developers did not have to jump through all those hoops. They didn't have to have an architect draw up anything beforehand. They didn't have to do those things. But yet some folks want these folks to do that exact same thing. So in my mind, our citizens benefit sometimes by not having them go through all the hoops that other localities do. I also looked at student housing. There's already students living in some of the units that we've described, the townhouses. As I understand it, the lowest levels is roughly 30% absentee. When you look at how do you find that out, you look to see where the tax tickets are mailed to. So already that is taking place. There are many of you who are afraid of student housing. I grew up on Giles Road in Blacksburg. My uncle built the house that we lived in and we rented it from him. We had a student living in our basement. We had students living all around us. We had students on the McDonald Street apartments. We had students that were down on Harstone that were called the Church Street apartments. It was a great experience as a kid growing up. I played chess with one of those students. He turned out to be the mayor of Radford and just stepped down, Bruce Brown. So I don't look at students being an evil. I look at the students as being the reason that the majority of us are in this community. They give back to our community, and yes, there's times that they do some things that are regrettable. But there are also the kids that are volunteering at fire and rescue. Some of those kids are driving all the way to Shawsville to volunteer for those rescue squads. So when I look at all those factors, that is why I will be voting in favor of this development. Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Before moving on, thank you all. I know we have all spent a lot of time on this issue. I appreciate every one of the supervisors, especially Supervisor Bone conducting the Saturday meeting at Bull and Bones, reaching out to the community to try to bring folks together. There being no other discussion, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? A yes vote would be to approve the zoning. A no vote would be to decline the rezoning.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
No.
Ms. Biggs?
No.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
No.
Chair Tuck?
Aye.
Have 4 ayes, 3 no, motion passes.
The next item on our agenda is Montgomery County Public Schools 2018 year-end carry forward. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second. Hey, I will do it.
All right, that was really close. I don't know who's first.
Ladies first.
Ladies first, yes, so there was a motion and a second. Is there any discussion about this carry forward money? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair Tuck?
Aye.
7 ayes.
The next item on our agenda is establishing the 2018 personal property tax relief. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Chair Tuck?
Aye.
7 ayes.
County Attorney.
We have the added item.
Oh, Adam, thank you very much.
Shaw Development.
The Shaw Development, is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll in regards to the Shaw Development rezoning?
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Chair Tuck?
Aye.
7 ayes.
No report, Mr. Chair.
County Administrator.
One item this evening I wanted to mention, there is a second meeting that VDOT is holding tomorrow night regarding I-81 improvements in the corridor. That meeting is tomorrow from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Salem Civic Center. I cannot attend that meeting tomorrow as I have 2 other obligations already tomorrow afternoon. I think Dan Brew is planning to attend, but I wanted to make you aware of that as well. And as we get information from VDOT on those, we'll certainly pass that on to you as well. That's all I have this evening.
Supervisor Fidzikowski.
I do plan on attending that meeting tomorrow, and hopefully I'll be able to persuade them to get started on widening 81.
Immediately.
Yeah, immediately, of course. Yes.
Bring
That's
your
all I have.
checkbook.
I'll bring Todd's checkbook.
Supervisor Biggs.
Yeah, I'll try to be there also because I have to go down to Salem anyway. Okay, I just wanted to do a few things. I covered the chamber meeting for Chair Tuck, and the 3 things I mentioned from the county were the I-81 issue, the reassessment, and the Clay Street. Chris wanted me to mention reassessment and Clay Street, which I did. And at our school board county liaison meeting, one of the things that came up is sort of changing, you know how we always have the meetings on the 5th Monday, but they're wanting to look at maybe doing it so when there's something that is important, we get together. But that being said, we are going to keep our October 29th joint meeting with them, and that is on a 5th Monday. The next meeting of the liaison group is September 27th. Let me see, let's see. I want to congratulate our clerk of court, Erica Connor, for a perfect audit. I saw that on her website. I think that's great. And then I wanted to ask Todd, in your work with the Department of Social Services, do you know if they are hiring any extra social workers? And the reason I'm asking is, one of the meetings I went to in Richmond, they said that because of Medicaid expansion, that a lot of the Department of Social Services are going ahead now and getting those people in place. And I just didn't know if ours was doing that or not.
Yeah, remember last meeting we voted to that money to
But
go
how
to
many,
hire.
you know how many they're going to get?
I think 2.
Okay, that's good, thank you. Yeah, that went out of my brain. Okay, the other thing is, I wanted to bring to your attention is, because of the Medicaid expansion, the state is cutting funds to local community services board. The idea is you cut the funding because they're going to receive more funding from the Medicaid expansion. This creates sort of a problem in that our local River Community Services could stand to lose $250,000 to $350,000, and it makes people nervous that serve on that board that, you know, you might lose this money up front and then you're trying to recover it from Medicaid, and sometimes the recovery from Medicaid, as many of you know, is slow. And so because of that, I did talk to the governor about it actually last week, and I told him this was a concern that we had, and he said he's very much aware of it and he thinks that it will all work out, but he'll be on top of it. So I went back and I said, well, that's what he said. So the other problem is that last year they wanted all the localities to give 10% more, and of course we are all strapped because localities are strapped for, you know, money, and especially since the state, you know, doesn't seem to be willing to do their part in some instances. So we gave 3%. And there was a push by the person at the state level to have our executive director explain why, by having the localities he serves send a letter in saying we gave 3%, we couldn't give 10% because. That's where that came from. So I also sent that back to the governor because, you know, it's tough. I mean, Craig knows. I mean, like, you only have a certain amount of money, and so I think we got our letter in, and so he sent James Pritchard sent all that back in. So that's basically my report.
Supervisor Bone.
I appreciate all the compliments about all my hard work and stuff like that, and we can move on. Thank you.
Supervisor Shepherd.
No report.
Supervisor King.
I had no report. Just want to thank Planning Commission and Planning Department for all your hard work. Thank you.
Vice Chair DeMonts.
Yeah, I was going to wait
Sorry.
to be recognized.
Sorry.
Because it would have been rude just to speak.
Sorry, I apologize.
I don't have a report, but per se, really. But I do want to say this last half of August, you know, from well, maybe from August 10th through the end of the month is always a really crazy time. And so I actually have not had two reports for 2 meetings in a row. So don't worry, next time I will have plenty to report on. I'm just stockpiling it all. But no, with Montgomery County starting school and my 2 children going back to school, and then Virginia Tech starting last week and Radford and New River both starting this week, it's just a crazy busy time for those of us that manage apartment communities and try to manage a family. So next time, guys, be prepared.
Got one quick thing.
Yes, sir.
Make sure her mic's off next meeting.
The hour's late. There's no report from the chair. This meeting's adjourned.